The relationship, yeah, was basically that they had learned from each other and made me aware of something I never even knew about. And the message is very simple at the end, enjoy.
There are Hollywood legends whose lives feel like open books. And then there is Robert De Niro, a man who built a career on silence, mystery, and a level of privacy almost unheard of in modern fame. For more than 60 years, he disappeared into character so completely that the world forgot to ask who he was when the cameras stopped rolling. But behind the roles, behind the mob bosses, fighters, loners, and broken men searching for redemption, was a private world shaped by a handful of extraordinary women. Women who entered his life at different crossroads, during the chaos of New York in the 1970s, the explosive fame of the 1980s, the emotional turbulence of the 1990s, and the quieter, more reflective years that followed. Some offered him stability, some challenged him, some loved the man long before the world loved the legend, and others arrived when he least expected it, changing him in ways he never admitted publicly. In this video, we step into the rarely told love story of Robert De Niro's life, the one Hollywood never got to film. Let's begin. Number 1. Diane Abbott. Before Robert De Niro became the mythic figure Hollywood knows today, before Taxi Driver, before Raging Bull, before the Oscars and the Mystique, there was Diane Abbott. She met him when he was still a rising, uncertain actor in New York City, a young man sharpening his craft in cramped apartments and dim rehearsal rooms. Diane didn't fall in love with a legend. She fell in love with a man still searching for himself. Their connection began quietly, the way real, grounded love often does. Diane, an actress and singer with a soulful, expressive voice, understood the struggle of a creative life. She knew the unpredictability, the long nights, the self-doubt, and De Niro admired her strength, her calm, her ability to see greatness in him long before the world did. When they married in 1976, he was just stepping into global fame. Diane appeared with him in films like Taxi Driver and New York, New York, not as a glamorous accessory, but as someone who understood his world inside out. In interviews, she often spoke gently, respectfully, always careful not to expose his private nature. She never tried to compete with his rising stardom. She simply held her place in his life with quiet dignity. De Niro adopted her daughter Drana as his own, one of the most meaningful decisions of his early adult life. Friends close to them would later say that in those years, Diane gave him stability he didn't yet know how to give himself. She grounded him during the chaos of sudden fame, the pressure of new responsibilities, and the psychological toll of method acting roles that consumed him. But as De Niro's world expanded, so did the cracks in their marriage. The man Hollywood demanded was not the man Diane had married, and slowly, painfully, the life they built together began to drift apart, not from lack of love, but from the weight of a destiny too large to share. Number 2. Helena Springs. If Diane Abbott represented the stability of Robert De Niro's early rise, then Helena Springs entered his life during a far more complicated chapter, one marked by success, emotional drift, and the search for something he couldn't yet define. Helena was no ordinary woman. She was a gifted singer-songwriter, known for her collaborations with icons like Bob Dylan. Her voice carried a softness tinged with longing, and her presence brought a sense of artistic freedom De Niro increasingly craved. Their connection began in the early 1980s, when De Niro was already a household name, but privately wrestling with the pressures of fame and the slow, irreversible unraveling of his marriage. Helena's arrival wasn't scandal, it was timing. Two artists, both restless, both searching for meaning at a moment when fame felt more suffocating than rewarding. Reports at the time described their relationship as intense, emotional, almost spiritual. Helena was young, brilliant, and full of a creative spark that reminded De Niro of his own hunger from years past. She understood the loneliness of ambition, the cost of constantly reinventing oneself, and De Niro, guarded as he was, found in her someone he could be unfiltered with. In later interviews, Helena spoke with striking honesty. She never embellished their relationship. She simply said they connected deeply during a time when both were navigating emotional chaos. She described him as serious, disciplined, yet surprisingly gentle. It was the gentleness, she said, that surprised her most. But timing is a quiet destroyer. De Niro was still tied to a world Helena could never step fully into. The pressures of his career, the shadows of past commitments, the complications of public scrutiny, all closed in. Their relationship faded before it ever had the chance to become something lasting. Still, for De Niro, Helena Springs became a reminder of a crossroads. The moment he realized that even a man who could disappear into characters struggled to understand his own heart. Number 3. Toukie Smith. If Helena Springs was a fleeting spark in Robert De Niro's life, then Toukie Smith was something far more enduring. A quiet flame that stayed lit through years of Hollywood chaos. They met in the late 1980s at a time when De Niro was navigating the weight of his stardom and the emotional aftermath of his first marriage. Toukie was already a star in her own right, a groundbreaking model for Versace, Chanel, and Thierry Mugler, and an actress with a warm, unforgettable screen presence. Toukie carried a softness that balanced De Niro's seriousness. She understood pressure. She had lived through it in the brutal world of fashion, where beauty had an expiration date and competition was ruthless. But she also carried resilience. Her twin brother Ron was a beloved member of the entertainment community, and losing him to HIV complications had given her a profound understanding of grief, strength, and silence. De Niro admired that depth. In interviews, she never spoke ill of him. She simply described their relationship as caring and supportive. Those who knew them said Toukie brought out a rare warmth in De Niro, a man often mistaken for aloofness. Together, they created a private little world, far from cameras, far from red carpets. In 1995, their lives changed forever when they welcomed twin sons, Julian and Aaron, via surrogate. It was one of the most quietly celebrated moments in De Niro's personal life. Friends say he was deeply devoted, protective, and softer than he had ever been before. But even love built on trust can be strained by the demands of fame. As De Niro's career expanded and Toukie's focus shifted to family and personal healing, their paths slowly diverged. Not with bitterness, but with an understanding that they had completed the chapter they were meant to share. Toukie Smith wasn't just a partner. She was a refuge, a reminder that even in Hollywood's coldest corners, warmth can still find a home. Number 4. Naomi Campbell. By the early 1990s, Robert De Niro was no longer just an actor. He was a myth, a symbol of American cinema. And in that same era, Naomi Campbell was rewriting the very definition of a supermodel. She was fierce, magnetic, unpredictable in the most intoxicating way. Their worlds couldn't have been more different, yet it was precisely that contrast that drew them together. Their connection was brief, but it left a mark. The press tried to sensationalize it, but those close to De Niro knew something quieter was happening. Naomi, still in her early 20s, carried a storm inside her, a whirlwind of ambition, vulnerability, and a hunger to be understood beyond beauty. De Niro, in his calm, steady manner, offered something she wasn't used to: grounded attention. Sources at the time said he admired her strength, her independence, her refusal to be defined by anyone's expectations. Naomi respected his discipline. How he approached acting like a monk approaches meditation. Their conversations weren't about glamour or fame. They were about art, identity, and the loneliness that comes when the world puts you on a pedestal too early. Naomi later hinted in interviews that De Niro was a gentleman, a man who treated her with dignity during a time when she often felt misunderstood. It was one of the few relationships she spoke of without bitterness, perhaps because it never tried to become something it couldn't. But the age difference, the pace of their careers, and the emotional storms both were weathering made a lasting bond impossible. Naomi was rising, expanding, exploding into global fame. De Niro was entering the most intense phase of his career. Their lives were moving too fast, too loudly, in opposite directions. Yet for a moment, two icons found comfort in each other's presence. A brief, bright flicker that reminded both of them what connection feels like when the world refuses to slow down. Number 5. Grace Hightower. Grace Hightower entered Robert De Niro's life not as a Hollywood star, but as a woman grounded in dignity, discipline, and quiet strength. She had worked as a flight attendant, a waitress, an activist, always with a sense of purpose, always with an empathy that drew people toward her. When De Niro met her in the late 1980s at a London nightclub, he was struck not by glamour, but by her calm presence. She wasn't dazzled by celebrity, and in a world where everyone wanted something from him, that alone made her unforgettable. Their relationship grew slowly, almost cautiously. By the time they married in 1997, De Niro was a global icon. Navigating fame with increasing weariness, Grace offered steadiness, something he desperately needed. She supported him quietly, without spectacle, and he admired her for it. They welcomed their son, Elliot, in 1998, a moment that softened De Niro in ways the public rarely witnessed. But their marriage, like many great Hollywood love stories, was a journey of turbulence and reconciliation. In 1999, De Niro filed for divorce, a moment that shocked those who believed they were inseparable. Grace responded not with anger, but with grace. True to her name, she fought for custody, stood her ground, and showed a resilience De Niro had perhaps underestimated. Something changed after that fight. Some say he saw her differently, saw the strength, the loyalty, the love he almost walked away from. In 2004, they quietly reconciled, renewing their vows in a ceremony attended by Hollywood giants like Meryl Streep and Martin Scorsese. For a time, they seemed unbreakable, but years later, life shifted again. Publicly, the marriage ended. Privately, they remained bound by a shared history, by a son they both adored, and by a respect that never fully left. Grace Hightower wasn't a chapter. She was an era, one defined by loyalty, second chances, and the fragile hope that even legends can find everlasting love. Number 6. Tiffany Chen. By the time Tiffany Chen entered Robert De Niro's life, he was no longer the fierce young actor fighting for his place in Hollywood. He was older, quieter, carrying the weight of decades, success, heartbreak, public battles, private wounds. Tiffany met him not at the beginning of his journey, but in the later act, when a man finally begins to understand what truly matters. They first connected in 2015 while working on the film The Intern. Tiffany, a world-renowned martial arts instructor, moved with a confidence and self-assurance that immediately caught De Niro's attention. She wasn't intimidated by him, nor did she treat him like a legend. She treated him like a man, a rare gift for someone who had spent a lifetime under scrutiny. Their bond grew slowly, built on friendship, mutual respect, and a sense of peace De Niro had not felt in years. Tiffany was calm, steady, nurturing, a woman who listened more than she spoke. Those close to De Niro noticed a shift in him. He smiled more. He seemed lighter, almost as if the noise of the world finally softened around him. In 2023, when the couple welcomed their daughter Gia De Niro, at 79, became a father once again. And in interviews, he was uncharacteristically open, describing the joy, the renewal, the gratitude he felt. "It never gets old," he said softly. It was one of the rare moments the public saw the tender man behind the legend. Tiffany wasn't a whirlwind romance or a dramatic chapter filled with heartbreak. She was something gentler, a companion in the final stretch of his life's journey, a reminder that love can arrive after everything else has already happened. With her, Robert De Niro didn't have to perform. He could simply be himself, and for a man who played 1,000 characters, that may have been the greatest gift of all. In the end, Robert De Niro's story is not only the story of a cinematic giant, It is the journey of a man shaped by 6 women who touched him in ways that fame could never erase. Some gave him comfort, others challenged him, and a few left behind a quiet ache he carried through the years. Each relationship softened parts of him, reshaped him, and reminded him of the fragile humanity behind the legend. Now the question is yours. Which woman do you believe left the deepest mark on Robert De Niro's heart? Share your thoughts in the comments. And if you love these Hollywood stories, don't forget to like, subscribe, and join us for the next chapter in Legendary Archives.